Hello and welcome. My name is Al Barrows, and this is UFO Disclosure, the podcast that's meant to show an average person's reaction to all the UAP, UFO news from everywhere and anywhere. Today, I'd like to relate a story I found on Middle Kingdom Oddities. It involves a Chinese farmer who claimed to have found a UFO crashed deep within a mountain. So it all started on June the 6th, 1994. A 27-year-old forest worker and farmer named Mun Chao Kwa heard a rumor that was too interesting to ignore. While gathering vegetables at the nearby Phoenix Mountain, villagers and fellow forestry workers had spotted a shiny white object in the distance on a southern slope. Meng shared the rumor with his family. His elder brother's suggestion was that it could be a weather balloon, and it excited Meng because he thought that he could possibly salvage the parts and sell them. With this idea in mind, he contacted and recruited his nephew-in-law, Mi Ho Hee, to investigate. With the sun barely risen, the two set out the next morning, taking the only mode of transportation available, the forestry train. They reached the southern peak at around 10:30, and as they curved a cluster of rocks, the object came into full view. Before them sat a roughly circular object around 300 meters in diameter, or about 984 feet in diameter. It was supported by pillar-like legs, which protruded from two tail-like extensions. Its smooth surface offered nothing in the way of information. One side of it appeared to be lodged into the rock face. Meng and his nephew were confused and uncontrollably excited at the prospect of what they had found. And despite not having any idea whatsoever of what the object actually was, they slowly approached it, and as they got within 150 meters, or about 492 feet, a strange, almost electrical sensation coursed through their bodies. While in a daze, they then heard a clicking sound, followed by a running water-like whoosh, as the object suddenly emitted a deafening screech, sending them backwards and startled. They stood for several moments before once again slowly moving forward. At this point, they felt a burning sensation across their skin, like they were being pricked by 1,000 needles. Dazed but nonetheless determined, Meng and his nephew regrouped before attempting to approach from another angle. This time, the shock was enough to almost knock them to the ground, at which point a feeling of deep, inexplicable dread filled every fiber of their beings. All one could think of was the word run. And as the two did, their hearts pounded while their skin continued to burn. Seeking the refuge of a far-off tree, the two collapsed, smoking cigarettes through trembling fingers. A heavy silence filled the air for several minutes. After regrouping, they returned to the forestry station, and there they regaled the workers with the story. Surprisingly, their description matched the claims of almost 60 people who on June the 6th reported seeing a large white, unidentified object on the mountain. At this point, an organized investigation ensues. With news spreading quickly, those in charge decided to organize an investigation to take place the next day. But with a bout of sudden, unexpected, and torrential rain, the trip was delayed for several days until June the 9th, when Meng himself personally led a group to the site. Reaching an open area around 9 a.m., the group decided to use their binoculars to try and spot the object. But the object wasn't visible from their vantage point. As many tried but failed to see anything, Meng took the binoculars. While looking around, he suddenly became startled. He opened his mouth and fell to the ground, convulsing violently. Although Meng had no history of seizures of any kind, the group placed his body on his side. At this point, they struggled to restrain him as he continued to thrash on the ground. The supervisor ordered Meng be taken to a local clinic while the rest continued the search. And while Meng was taken down the mountain, the remaining members reached the site, finding nothing. Once Meng arrived at the clinic, Dr. Lin Hui Meng, the sole resident practitioner, took Meng's pulse, noting it was stable. And despite this, Meng reacted violently to all other attempts to examine him. Specifically, he had a strong aversion to metal medical tools. The doctor's initial assumptions were that Meng had suffered from either an epileptic seizure or schizophrenia, and yet both were later discounted, with the doctor subsequently stating Meng's involuntary reactions, although unclear, were genuine. So the incident quickly became the talk of the region, and the Forestry Bureau sent Guang Hongsheng to investigate. After interviewing several witnesses, Guang Hongsheng determined that it was neither a plane crash or a hoax. He concluded that an unidentified object had indeed appeared on the mountain, leading to further investigations at a higher level. The second investigation failed to explain the incident any more effectively, so field investigations continued to go on, and Meng himself continued to be the subject of evaluations, which found no delusional or unstable tendencies. His demeanor, however, continued to cause confusion. Okay, so at this point, Meng Chaoqua's story becomes even more bizarre. He reveals that he's been hiding part of the truth out of embarrassment. He testifies that he had had a sexual encounter with an extraterrestrial while being at two places at once. He states simply that he had hid certain details out of embarrassment. Meng began to divulge what he believed occurred on June the 9th. As onlookers watched helplessly as he convulsed on the ground, Meng was at once on the grass and also within a strange craft, where a six-fingered humanoid figure clad in feather-like attire had just sent him, shaking to the ground as a glow emitted from his hands. Then he remembers his colleagues lifting him to a seated position. Behind them, Meng saw a 2-meter tall, or about a 6-foot tall entity sporting a large round head with square-shaped eyes. Its body was clad seemingly in a puffed-up black, almost rubber-like suit. It had neither seams nor wrinkles. It did, however, have an exposed patch revealing something resembling a human female's reproductive organs. He continued to convulse and was unable to speak. Meng was only able to wonder why the others couldn't see what clearly stood before him, at which point, for just a few seconds, a sexual encounter took place between them. Okay, so I said it would get very bizarre. And it's unfortunate that his encounter only lasted a few seconds, but Meng does go on to explain what happened at the doctor's office when he was initially examined. So when recounting the story, Meng stated that by the point he was returned to the clinic, his aversion was not to the instruments being used on him by the doctor, but actually to the extraterrestrial and the act in question, which he believes was something akin to biological sampling. In that moment, he said he felt like part of a process of wildlife specimen collection. Meng goes on to say that he encountered this female extraterrestrial 2 more times. So after his initial encounter, Meng stated he encountered this female extraterrestrial 2 more times, once on a forestry train and once while his wife slept beside him, with the sampling occurring both times. The morning after Meng divulged all of this, he awoke in intense discomfort with his head, forehead, abdomen, and thighs all burning with a number of red marks and scars. So a month went by with no more strange occurrences. Meng began to settle back into his old life until on July the 19th, he shared with investigators the details of something that had happened just 3 days prior. On the night of July the 16th, Meng suddenly awoke to a crackling sound, after which his room was flooded with light, and the humanoid figure from the past appeared once more. The extraterrestrial told him to come without thinking. He followed. And as it grabbed his hand, they passed through the wall before ascending up into the clouds. This brought them to the same white object he had witnessed just a month before. He was taken inside and soon began floating in midair. The inside was like that of a cooking pot, he said, completely curved with a soft glow being emitted. The extraterrestrial made a strange squeaking sound. The wall slowly opened with another similar extraterrestrial entering, carrying a large, square, glass-like object. Within it, a spherical object turned slowly, surrounded by small pebble-like objects. As he looked at the object, in his head, he heard a voice saying, "This is what your people call Mother Earth, while these are what you call comets, and they are going to collide." The voice then went on to state that if Earthlings fail to cherish their environment, our planet may end up like these comets, smashing into other celestial bodies before disappearing forever. At this point, Meng wants to know whether he had had a child as a result of his sexual encounter, to which they replied, "In 60 years, your child will be born elsewhere. You might see them there." He felt himself suddenly being lifted again before regaining consciousness back at home. While in the distance, a bright fiery object rapidly disappeared into the sky. 4 months after the original encounter, Dr. Chen Yang Tuang, Beiyang University's aerodynamics expert, was drafted by China's UFO Association to conduct yet another investigation, which concluded no known form of aircraft had been in the area. However, what they did find proved truly eye-opening. Firstly, interviews revealed that local villagers had seen a strange, slow-moving, luminous object in the sky, and in the same exact location where Meng and his nephew had claimed to have seen the object, within a 150-meter radius, or approximately 490 feet radius of where it supposedly sat, tree branches were scorched a strange black and yellow color. Furthermore, the surrounding grass had grown at a rapid rate, almost 1.5 meters or 3 feet, by the time the investigators arrived. Most bizarre of all, numerous scattered stones were both discolored and brittle, and some particularly large rocks having seemingly been flipped or moved, while others lay split clearly in half, with surfaces smooth as polished glass. The investigating team also experienced a number of strange instrument malfunctions. Dr. Chen's conclusion was that, quote, "an unidentified energy had acted upon the rocks." And as time passed, Meng's story became a legend. Meng himself underwent and passed lie detector tests. Unfortunately, public skepticism remained. By the year 2000, Meng's wife passed away suddenly, and in 2003, with unending public scrutiny, he decided to finally leave his hometown to work elsewhere. In 2005, he was found working in a university cafeteria. So it wasn't until 2016 that Meng finally returns to his hometown to see his aging mother. And while there, he claims to have had another encounter with the extraterrestrial. As he slept in his old house, he claimed the extraterrestrials returned that night, at which point Meng asked them to give him some proof, something to show that his story wasn't fabricated. They gave him 2 stones, which in 2017 were analyzed and found to have contained rare earth elements in supposedly unusually high concentrations. Years later, with the events now a distant memory, Meng claims to be even more convinced than ever that what he experienced was real. So is Meng Chao-Kuo's story real? Meng himself seems fully convinced. The factors that lend credence to his story are the fact that he never benefited financially from his ordeal. As a matter of fact, he seemed to have shunned any publicity whatsoever. The local villagers also testified that they saw a glowing object in the sky the day that Meng had his experience. And when the investigations were conducted, they had malfunctions of their instruments. They also found physical evidence of tree branches being discolored and broken, and overall changes in the vegetation in that remote area. There was also the rocks that Meng claimed to have been given to him by the extraterrestrial. But neither those rocks nor any other substantial evidence has ever come forward. I have to wonder, though, is Meng Chao Quan one day going to meet his hybrid extraterrestrial child? My name is Al Barrows. This has been UFO Disclosure. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks.